What is going on, guys? Wait, that's not my introduction. Hold on. Hey you, the viewer who's watching this video, welcome back to my channel. And before we get started today, if you're not a fan of fun, there are timestamps in the description so you can get right to the build, but let's get on with the intro. So over the past couple of days, I've clocked way more time in Cyrodiil than I ever have before, and it's in one singular campaign, as I'm helping this man right here. Yeah, that one. Push for Emperor. And it's been a lot of fun, but I've noticed that my Templar doesn't quite have the kind of Zerg wiping potential that I would like my builds to have. So I did what any logical me would have done, and I went out and I made myself a Beyblade Warden build. It can 1vx, it has 1vx'd, and it definitely does what it's designed to do, which is wipe groups. And it's been the most fun I've had on Warden in a good long while. And I'm going to go ahead and get its rating out of the way, its approachability rating, and I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5, simply for the fact that the gear is not the easiest thing in the world to get. Other than that, if you have a basic understanding of combat and ESO, this build is extraordinarily fun and you can turn off your brain and do well with it. And like I said, I don't do a lot of open world. This is the most open world PvP I've ever done, and I've learned so much in this short period of time, and I've poured all of that experience into this build. So I know exactly what I need, I know exactly what is required, so you can call this an open world build, but testing it in Battlegrounds, it performs equally as well. And this build is fun, and that's what matters. All of this to say that this build has my stamp of approval on it, so I know the build works. Oh, you don't believe me, do you? Oh, well, here you go, here's a montage for you. Get ready, because this was good. Whoa. Before you watch the montage, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing and leaving a like on the video, even sharing the video, because it really helps out the channel, and it's nice to know that people watch my videos. And if there is a specific kind of build that you want me to try and make, like for a certain class or a certain type of build, just leave it in the comments below and I'll probably get back to it. Because I really enjoy making builds, but no one really suggests anything. These are the things I gotta figure out on my own, so if you want to see something, just leave it in the comments. And with that, I really do hope you enjoy the rest of the video.
Come here! Finish the clip! Let's go! Let's go! Oh, that's going in the video. satisfying.
Okay, for our attributes, we have no points into magicka, we have 64 points into health, and we have no points into stamina. Okay, so here are the unbuffed stats of the front bar. If you need to pause, go ahead and do that. Here are the unbuffed stats of the back bar. So, applying some buffs, this is the front bar, and this is the back bar, and do note that these numbers get dramatically higher while in combat. So on this build currently, I'm a Khajiit. It wouldn't be my first choice. My first choice would be an Orc, and then I'd go Imperial, and then I'd do Khajiit. But you know we gotta keep the face of the channel, so here. So as a Khajiit, here are the passes that we get. Robustness, increasing all of our recoveries. Lunar Blessings, increasing the max stats of all of our resources. And Feline Ambush, increasing our critical damage and healing done. And on this build, when we crit really hard, which is very nice because it allows us to have some good burst. But you can be really any race as long as you have the skill to back up your playstyle. For the Mundus, we are using the Serpent. We are using the Serpent because it increases our stamina recovery, which is very helpful for staying in the fight longer and being able to cast a lot of abilities. Plus, it scales really well with the minor and major endurance that we get, so we get even more recovery. Okay, for our food, we are using Lava Foot Soup and Salt Rice, giving us maximum stamina and increasing our stamina recovery. Pairs well with our Mundus and the major and minor endurance. For our potions, we are using the Essence of Health or the Tri-Stat potions. These are very powerful and I like having these because when we need resources, we can get them just by popping this potion, also giving us good recoveries for each of the stats as well when we use it. And we are not using any weapon poisons at all on this build. Hello all and welcome to my video. So this is the gear. On our front bar we are using a Plague Break Mace with a charged weapon enchantment, and it is Nirnhoned. And if you don't know what Plague Break does, you're living under a rock. Here you go. This is what it does. On our offhand we are using a Plague Break Mace with an Absorb Stamina enchantment, and this one is charged. I'll talk about that in a second. So on our back bar we are using the Vaitoshrand's Greatsword with a weapon damage enchantment, and it is powered. You could use defending instead of powered, but I have powered on this sword, and here's what the proc does. Okay, for our head we are using Balorg's Mask, which means it's medium with a Tri-Stat enchantment, and it is Divines, and this is our monster set. So we are using the Cuirass of the Trainee, that means it's heavy with a Tri-Stat enchantment, it is reinforced, and this will give us 1 piece of health, which is very good. For our shoulder, we are using a medium Balorg shoulder with a stamina enchantment, and it is well fitted. And for our belt, we are using Thundercaller's Sash. I need to change the enchantment to stamina. It is well fitted, and we're using this for the 3-piece bonus that we get for having Thundercaller. In its place, you could use stuns, because stuns give you the same 2 and 3 piece. and it's craftable. I just so happen to have Thundercaller on hand, so that's what I'm using. And the belt, it needs to be light, by the way. For our gloves, we are using Plague Break Bracers with a Stamina enchantment, and those are impenetrable. For the legs, we are using Plague Break Guards with a Stamina enchantment, and those are well fitted. And for the foots, we are using Plague Break Boots with a Stamina enchantment, and those are impenetrable. So for our necklace, we are using Thundercaller's Amulet with a weapon damage enchantment, and it is infused. For our ring, we are using Thundercaller's Ring with a weapon damage enchantment, that is infused. And for our second ring, we are using the Marken Ring of Majesty with a weapon damage enchantment, and it is swift, and here's what it does. So if you don't have the Marken Ring of Majesty, you could use Malakath in its place. If you don't have Malakath, then you could use the Wild Hunt. If you don't have the Wild Hunt, you could use Death Dealers. If you have no mythic rings at all, put a Trainee Ring on in its place. And if you can't transmute or change the trait to Swift for the last ring, Robust works okay. Again, you're just going to be losing out on a lot of damage and a lot of movement speed. And for the Veterans Greatsword, if you don't have a Greatsword or any of the Veterans 2 hands, you could just use a Trainee Sword in its place and make sure it's either powered or defending. It's your choice. Another option is you could just drop all those sets entirely and just run Clever Alchemist on the back bar, but I tried Clever Alchemist. I do not really like Clever Alchemist and the fact that you have to micromanage it so often in combat. It does really help if you get it to go off and then you open a massive burst on a group of people. It's guaranteed to nuke them, but with max stacks of Veterans Greatsword and the 3 pieces of Thundercaller, we get roughly the same amount of damage, and we have a much higher uptime on it, and also it frees up a slot so we can actually use a potion when we need it, rather than using it to make a burst combo happen. And dropping Clever Alchemist also meant I could swap some things around, so like the Veterans Greatsword and then the skills I'm going to go into in a minute. That really helps with our single target pressure, so that way we can actually duel on this build. So it can burst groups, and it can also 1v1. So on our front bar, our first skill is Whirling Blades. This is a great AoE spammable, and it's also an execute, and it works really well combined with our other skills. Okay, so next we have Bird of Prey, and when we use it, we get Major Expedition, and just having it slotted gives us Minor Berserk, increasing our damage done by 5%, and it being an Animal Companion's ability, it gives us access to the passives from the Animal Companion's skill line, which are very good. Next, we have Resolving Vigor. This is our front bar heal, and it is a heal over time, and it is very good. Next up, we have Subterranean Assault. This is our burst skill. Combine this with Whirling Blades and Dawnbreaker, and you can nuke any group. Also, having it slotted gives us Animal Companion passives. Next up, we have Rendering Slashes. I had Turn Evil here originally, but I wanted more single target pressure, and I also wanted another spammable that I could use on one person. So I dropped the Turn Evil for this, and I've stuck with it ever since because this was an amazing trade-off. For our front bar ultimate, we are using Dawnbreaker of Smiting. So this is our CC, and also it hits really hard. So you sub-assault, and then you use this, and then you just spin, and you win. Also, having it slotted allows us to get use out of the Fighter's Guild passives, which are very nice. Okay, so on our back bar, we have Bullnetch. This is our sustain skill, and you can cast this, and it removes a negative effect from you every 5 seconds. But also, having it slotted gives us access to the Animal Companion's passives, and one in particular, Bond with Nature. Every time a skill ends, you heal. So another thing you could do with this is you could just spam it since it's free. So every time you spam it, it'll heal you, and it'll also remove a negative effect. So you can just keep spamming this, and it'll purge you of negative effects. It'll only do one at a time, but still. Next up, we have Shuffle. We have Shuffle and not Elude because I like having the immunity to snares and immobilizations because everyone's a Dragonite this patch. Next up, we have Green Lotus. So every time we light or heavy attack while this is active, we heal. And we're light attack weaving, of course, anyway, so we'll be getting healing from this. This can also heal teammates, and also while it's active, we get Savagery, giving us more crit chance, so that means more burst. And also, when we heal an ally with this, using the Nature's Gift passive, we restore Magicka or Stamina. It'll normally be Magic, because that's going to be lower generally. And also, this skill looks really cool when it's buffed on you. Next up, we have Rally. So this skill gives us access to the Frenzied Momentum from our Veterans two-handed. So it gives us Major Brutality, Minor Endurance, and it's also a burst heal. Very loaded skill. Next up we have Ice Fortress. This is our armor buff. It gives us major resolve, increasing our physical and spell resistance, and it also gives us minor protection, reducing our damage taken by 5%. And you can apply this to teammates too, but most people run armor buffs as is, but still. Also lets us have access to Winter's Embrace passives, which can really help with our defense. And for our back bar ultimate, you have two choices that I like to use, switch back and forth. We have Permafrost, and then the other one would be Healing Thicket. If you're planning on being a lot more offensive, use Permafrost. If you're going to be a lot more defensive and you need a little bit better healing, use Healing Thicket. And also don't forget to fill out all of the passives that you can. So literally everything for the skill lines that you're using. Your dual wield passives, your light armor passives, your medium armor passives, heavy armor passives, two-handed passives, undaunted passives if you have access to them, fighters guild passives, medicinal use in the alchemy tree, so you need to get that if you don't have it. Your support and assault passives, your racial passives. See, I'm going through all of them this time. There's a lot. Just make sure you get them and you have the skill points for it. Okay, for our champion points, in the role player tree, we have Master Gatherer, Plentiful Harvest, Gifted Rider, and Steed's Blessing. For the sweaty tree, we have Master at Arms, Biting Aura, Ironclad, and Duelist Rebuff. And in the potato tree, we have Celerity, Survival Instincts, Sustained by Suffering, and Slippery. If you do not want to use Slippery, you could also use in its place Relentlessness, which will give you major protection whenever you get stunned. And obviously fill out all the little yellow stars, but prioritize getting those slottables first. So if you didn't know, this patch, the charge trait for weapons got buffed, so now it has a very good chance to proc status effects. And before I was using Sharpened on my maces, but as you can see when I attack this Ogrim here, there's no status effects that are applied to him, like hardly any at all. But then we switch it out and we go to Charged on our offhand. Watch all of the dots that stack on top of him and look just how much pressure we apply to him with one attack. So the Absorb Stamina enchantment on our charge will proc Breach, which will reduce their physical and spell resistance, and then the charge, the Shock Cliff on our other mace will proc Vulnerability, increasing their damage taken by 5%. And then on top of that, Rendering Slashes, which will proc Hemorrhaging because it's a bleed effect, and then you have Plague Break, which will proc the disease status effect, reducing their healing. And then you have Subterranean Assault, which can sometimes proc the poison status effect, which will add another dot on top of that. So basically, you just have a lot of offensive pressure with just those couple skills. So this is why we're able to hold our own in a 1v1. Okay, so you're going to start by buffing up, of course, making sure everything's up and ready to go. So then you switch to your front bar. You could use Bird of Prey to close the gap faster, and then you use Sub Assault, and then you heavy attack while Sub Assault is getting ready to come up. And then as soon as your heavy attack lands, you use Rendering Slashes, and then you just repeat Light Attack, Rendering Slash, Light Attack, Rendering Slash, Light Attack, Rendering Slash, and making sure your buffs and your Subterranean Assault is up all the while. And when Dawnbreaker is ready, you can use that. I tend to do a lot of heavy attacking over light attacks anyways, but still, either or in between Rendering Slashes, and this is how you keep up that single target pressure on them. And of course, when they get low, you start pressing your Execute, which is Whirling Blades. So when dealing with groups of players, or you're going to go for that multi-kill, what you're going to do is you're going to buff up, you're going to sub-assault, you're going to run in there, hold heavy attack, you're going to open with heavy attack, and after your heavy attack lands, you're going to Dawnbreaker, and then you're just going to start spinning. And then people will die, Plague Break will proc, and more people will die, and then it's just carnage. So this section is just things to keep in mind while you're playing this build. I find a lot of the time I run out of stamina and I don't know why, but then I just think about it for a second. I realize I'm doing way too much sprinting. So on this build, and for mainly all of your other builds, try not to do so much sprinting, because I make that mistake and then I get to a fight and I wonder why I have no stamina. So just be mindful of how you're using your resources and try not to sprint, because you move fast enough as is without needing to sprint with wings. And just, you know, the one swift jewelry that we have. And another thing to know, people are like, that stamina pool is really, really low. Like, I don't know if I can deal with 21k stam. Oh, here's the thing. A large stamina pool is completely useless if there's no stamina in it. But a small stamina pool, as long as there's stamina to be used, then it doesn't really matter the size of the stamina pool, okay? So this is why you normally see on all of my builds that we don't really have that high of a stamina stat, but that doesn't matter when our recovery is so high that it just makes up for having a bunch of resources. The one thing you should always aim for when it comes to stats though is at least having a baseline of health, either 28k or 30, so aim for that. And one final thing, some of you will probably try and point out that we don't have very high physical and spell resistance. That's not an issue when our heals heal us for a lot. Our rallies can heal us for 20k on a crit, and about 11 to 12k without a crit. Vigor gives us the heal over time that we need when we need it, and using Lotus Flower, that also gives us healing as long as we're light attack weaving. So it really doesn't matter how high our resistances is. Yes, it can help to have high resistances, but our survivability comes from being able to line of sight with speed and having very powerful healing. As you can see by the clip in the background, where this is just me playing on the defensive until I can find a good opening to do some damage. And, well, I reckon that about does it for the build video. If I missed anything or I left anything out, please check the comments. The description. As recently I've found myself writing daggum paragraphs worth of information in the description about the build of things I've discovered after posting the video, so check there. I do challenge you to try this build. If you have all the pieces that you're able to make this build, I do challenge you to try it. This build is really fun and it'll be worth your time to put together for sure. As if, like, look, I got all of those clips that I used in the montage, and I even have more. I got all of those within 2 days of making the build, okay? So that tells you something about how good the build is. Good. Well, it works. So I genuinely hope you enjoyed the build video. If you did, showing your support is very much appreciated again, as it really helps out the channel. And if you have any ideas for a build video or anything in general that you'd like me to try and make, go for it. Put it in the comments. I'll probably be able to do it. You know, I like a challenge. That's cool. But yeah, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching the video. You know, all that stuff. And have a good night.